Hi, everyone. Teresa and Kristen here. Excited to chat with one another and with you virtually about this concept of high performing team members and the specific things that distinguish them from their peers. What makes a high performer a high performer? And there's certainly a lot of different angles we can view this through. But Kristen and I are really pumped to dive into the umbrella of self awareness and what that means, how high performers exhibit and continually explore self awareness. So, Kristen, one of the first things we started talking about was impact, and you had so many amazing things to say about impact.
Yes, so hi everyone. Welcome and hi from Germany actually.
Yeah.
Isn't it fun? Anyway, yeah, impact. Exactly. So one of the things we see in high performers really is, their their self-awareness around, the values that they're holding, the beliefs that they're having about themselves, about others, about the world,
Mm,
really the needs that they have, you know. Um, and it's not something they know somehow, it's all about this really taking time to do and a fearless audit about themselves. What are the things that they do on a daily basis, that might impact them in one way or another, but also might impact other people. Really doing the self-awareness audit on a regular basis and really understanding the way they behave, the way they believe, and the needs that they have, and voicing those needs or not. What might that mean in terms of the impact for themselves, the impact on others? So that's what we mean by impact. It's really coming back to doing a fearless audit on a regular basis and really understanding, where am I today? What are the things that might get in the way? Again, talking about behaviors here, talking about, understanding what do I need today in order to perform the best way I can. And, not being afraid to voice these things for themselves and others.
yeah. No, I love that so much, Kristen. And when you talk about, whether we call it a fearless audit, a courageous audit,
Mhm.
um, when I think about impact and the people we have worked with, leaders or team members who are really impactful, they don't see themselves as static, as like, I became a high performer. Now I'm just going to wrap up in a blanket and ride this thing out, right? That it's this ongoing commitment to
Yes.
doing the work, right? To having that audit of yourself, the reflection of yourself,
Mhm.
to seeing where you need to grow, right? To see areas that you might be able to help others.
Yes.
Um, because as we were getting ready for today, that was one thing I feel like I hear a lot in our work is high performer as this one person who works in isolation and just can move all of their widgets from one side to the next in the shortest amount of time, as opposed to seeing a high performer as perhaps the biggest competency builder of the group, right? Someone who helps, who knows how to leverage their influence to raise everyone up quite a bit.
Yes.
We talked about curiosity, which is
Mhm.
definitely a value here at Sarah Nolison Inc. Um, Kristen, what do you see, even in your work with your coaching clients, what is coming up related to curiosity or how you think that fuels that understanding of impact or self awareness?
Mhm. Mhm. I think I see a lot with my clients specifically, when we talk about curiosity. I mean, it's something that somehow all want to, have is or be a curious leader or be a curious person or human being in general, But curiosity it comes back to curiosity for themselves, and it starts
Mhm.
here, who am I? What do I need? What is important to me? plus then curiosity also about other people, really taking the time to understand, okay, how do my team members actually like to work? How do they like to communicate even? What's important to them? What is the boundary that they hold and that's important and that they want to value? What are their values actually? Really taking the time and also the courage sometimes to learn these things about our team members, our peers really, but also about ourselves again. So curiosity really goes different ways. It's never just one way. It's about different learning about the world really and the people around us, plus ourselves. So that's how I see it, and that's what my clients actually, they get really excited about when we talk about, how can we get curious with others actually. And then they get to practice that, and find out, what is my peer Sarah,
Yeah.
need and want, and really getting to know the person even a little bit more,
That's making me think of, curiosity is so invigorating, right? It's so energizing to get curious. Um, I just saw a statistic that 40% of our actions and behaviors are just from autopilot, right? And that's not counting walking and all of those things, breathing, those types of things, but like just our actual behaviors. 40% are autopilot, which is not a curious zone of the brain. So, like, there's something inherently biologically, it's so invigorating about curiosity. I mean, I'm kind of excited just hearing you talk about it, to be like, yeah, let's get curious with each other again, right? We've worked with each other for a while, so it's time. Another one we talked about, Kristen, was that really high performing team members are skilled at conversations and communication. So we talked about things like knowing how to build and sustain trust through conversations, understanding avoidance, and having the skills to have those types of conversations regularly, which is clearly something we're really passionate about. We could say, and if you haven't read Don't Feed the Elephants by Sarah Noel Wilson, this would be a great reminder to do so. But Kristen, how often with your coaching clients do you see conversations, whether it's people often default to, I need help with difficult conversations, and most people need help with conversations in general, right? Oh, and this is making me think. I was working with a team, and at the end of the session, they said, when we think about difficult conversations and we focus on the word difficult, it feels awful and like something to avoid and kind of miserable. But when we
Yes.
focus on the word conversation, it feels like, oh, I probably have some skills to get close to this. So, like, what has come up for you when you think about your own journey with conversations or your work with clients? What are you seeing there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love what you just said, because it's exactly that. People, and especially clients that I work with and serve,
Mhm.
uh, let me share a particular example. One of my very first clients, she really wanted help with a conversation or a meeting that she had coming up with her boss around a project that she was leading, and really needed some guidance there. And it was exactly that. The focus was, and I love that what you just said, the focus was very much on the difficult part instead of learning or focusing on building the skill of holding what seems like an
Mhm.
upcoming conversations, but really understanding, okay, what is the fear actually he's holding, or the worry that she might have, or an assumption even about the person, about herself, the conversation, the project, whatever, the outcome of that conversation. So really setting herself up for success to do that self-awareness piece that we talked about earlier, so that she could test her assumptions. That was one part, but also helping her to think about some wording that makes her already feel much more confident about herself. It's because sometimes the so-called difficult conversations, they make us feel so like wanted to go into like
Mm.
go under cover or something, but really it's what I realized, especially also with that client, is is the wording, is how to voice the things that in a very respectful, but in a very not demanding isn't the right word, but being confident, in what you need from your manager, from your peers, and so on. Really having that self-awareness is so critical when it comes to conversations, to that, once you know that part, I think it has become, for her at least, much more easier. And the conversation went really well because she was able to voice what she needed from him, and I feel like the project has worked really well for her, and she, they had a really great result. So there was a big learning for her. And so yeah, that's coming up very often. People go into conversations, and it's exactly what you just said earlier, is with a worry, and they really focus on the difficult, and curiosity comes in here too, is understanding, okay, how do you like to work on this project? What would you like to add here?
Yeah.
Important for you as well, really, learning those skills. And I think high performing team members, they can voice those things, they can get curious with other people. Sometimes it's just taking a learning, it's a learning process. That's what it is.
Yeah, I love that you've given me a lot to chew on there, and how rewarding it can feel to take that risk, to advocate for yourself, or to step up and say, this is what I need, right? And that it can't all be on the team member. The leader has to know how to receive that um, and meet that moment, right? And it sounds like in that situation, they did, and it worked out. And so that feels good just knowing that happened somewhere in the world right now, doesn't it?
I always talk about, even you, I know you worry about going into this conversation, and it might be a very difficult one. Yes, it might be true, but I always ask the client, what could be a positive outcome? What could be a positive impact you're having on yourself, but also on the other people? How might other people benefit from you showing up and in a very different way going forward, going into voicing, addressing things, that might get in the way of, people's performance, for example, so staying curious with the other person, not pointing fingers. It's about staying curious, and pointing out what you see, what you hear, things like that, so really, I think everything comes together here with difficult conversations, in terms of self-awareness, the impact that we're having on ourselves and others. So, yeah. And I think a lot of people have this big aha moment. Oh, now I see how me showing up differently in conversation might have a very, very different impact going forward for myself and others.
Yeah, I really, I love this practice. This is something I don't think we do regularly enough, but in getting ready for a conversation, to pause and say, what is a positive outcome, right? I mean, ideally, maybe you find a win-win, or it goes how you're hoping it would go, but also the positive outcome of doing something you've never done before,
Yes.
right? Of setting that healthy boundary, of changing how a process is going to flow for the team going forward, right? I mean, like, there's something so beautiful about, because our brain prioritizes negative possibility, negative outcomes. The brain wants to keep us safe, so it likes to give us lots of reminders of all the ways it could go so wrong. So I love that so much, Kristen. Like, the intentionality of being like, and just pause. Like, we hear all the ways this could go so wrong. What's just one way it might go right, right? Or one way it might have a positive outcome. Let's just pause and consider the possibility. I think that's so powerful. That's a real gift you've just given us. I'm not sure that's something we've done consistently. So,
yeah, I like to ask my clients, to really ask them, okay, because it might feel what is the one difficult and negative thing, because that's on their mind, worries. We need to get this out, talk about it. Let's, at the same time, what could be the benefits. And sometimes if it's a leader that really worries about, going into a conversation, it's like, okay, what could your team members learn from you by practicing, by you seeing doing these very things, how can they maybe adopt this behavior or adopt, how to go into a difficult conversation. So that's the also impact that we talk about, and when I
Yeah.
say it's exactly, and then, we could go so far with that. It's like,
Mm.
how do you set up the team up for success even, and how do you build an environment that's full of trust where we can have so-called difficult
Yeah.
conversations. So
Mm.
again, I could go so
Yeah.
far, but
Yeah.
I don't have so much time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep talking.
No, but you and I will come back to a few of these later on our own after this. Um, the last one I want to make sure we talk about, because it's a little counterintuitive, I think, for some of the folks listening potentially, or what we see regularly, is we often hear this concept that high performers work a ton of hours, that work is their number one. I spend more hours here than anywhere else. This is my most important thing. And that they are dedicated to the point that I would call unhealthy, right? That they have no identity outside that as a worker, or they're only celebrated for um, or rewarded maybe for an unhealthy amount of hours worked, an unhealthy amount um, of hours, I think, on a regular basis. And one thing that you and I were talking about that we see in folks we would consider high performers are those healthy boundaries, and a healthy life balance. I think like all of these, is a topic all in itself. But we know with the amount of burnout folks are experiencing, that singular focus on work, on churning out a product, on um, the perfectionism, which is a horrible kill for your self care vibe, um, that those are issues that are coming up regularly and leading to negative social outcomes for people, being isolated, negative health outcomes. When we're sitting at our desk, we're not up, we're not connecting, we're not moving. Um, I think we've all had times when maybe I was a high performer, but I wasn't taking very good care of my body. I was just kind of shoveling food in at my desk while I was working. And therefore, that wasn't sustainable for me as a human long term. So, Kristen, what do you want to add? What's your perspective? What do you hear from clients on this aspect of really embodying self care as a key component of being a high performer?
So really, I have a client right now that talks a lot about, saying yes to herself more and
Mm,
no to others. I know that can be daunting, especially if there are worries that comes with that, But at the same time, again, it comes back to this whole idea of um asking, okay, what would be a benefit of saying yes to yourself? And one that we identified as saying yes to your family more as well. By
yeah.
to yourself, it also means saying yes to your family more, or to other team members, or peers. So really, I think high performers that really take self-care as a one critical aspect to that they work on. I feel like yeah, in itself, self-care, we all universally, I would say it's a challenge that I see more often than not.
Mm,
It's saying yes to yourself more and your needs and what you need, and setting healthy boundaries for yourself, as we just said, will benefit so many people around us, not just ourselves. So really looking
mm,
at something, again, it comes back to impact. When I look after myself more and be sure that I'm healthy, that I feel okay, that I feel good about myself, then it will show to the world and to the people
mm.
around you that you feel good about your work, that you don't have to mask anything, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel
Yeah.
like, it all comes back to impact again, it's the impact that we have on ourselves and others around us.
Yeah. Well, and even as you're talking, it made me think about, seeing self-care as a way to give to yourself, and then also to give really good things to others, because we've all, I mean, I'll speak for myself, and certainly everyone in my life have had a time where you're only having these outputs, you're not having anything coming in for you, right? And then what you're
Mhm.
able to give others isn't great after a while, because you're coming in the morning potentially to work, or you're logging in and your tank is already at half. You know, you haven't replenished or even close from the evening before or the weekend. And so self-care is that beautiful proactive use of taking care of yourself too, right? And to take care of yourself in ways that will ultimately allow you, um, as a human, for you, but for others, right? To give more, to contribute more fully, without being burning the candle at both ends. Or is there a German equivalent to like burning the candle at both ends? Is there a German? I always love culturally. If anyone listening, this is my Midwestern, burning the candle at both ends. But I'm always love what other cultures use to describe, like when we're wearing too thin, or burning more than we have to give, kind of okay, if you think of it, Kristen.
I will think about it. If there's another German listening in here, maybe they want to send
Yeah,
something. I can't think about anything right now. No, I will
yeah,
think about that. Yeah, but I think it's really what you're just saying is like making this a high priority and making it even a bit an understanding, what is the result, or what good is coming out for everyone,
yeah,
and when I give myself, it's almost like a lot of people want to allow and give themselves permission,
yes,
you know, to do
yeah,
self-care, which in a way, if that's one thing you have to do, then absolutely. I wish we didn't have to give ourselves permission to
mm,
make ourselves feel good, but maybe when
yeah,
you're there, and it's simply a given that this is part of life as well.
yeah. Kristen, as we get ready to close, when you and I were chatting about this today, and a lot of other days too, we felt like the bottom line came down to culture. Do you want to share some thoughts on that?
So yeah, really. So I think all of this, I think high performing, team members, teams really thrive best when, it's been when they can be who they are,
Mm,
the culture, when the organization invites a culture of trust, of, psychological safety, where we can have difficult conversations and are encouraged, to have those
mm,
conversations, where we are encouraged, to do self-care, where we are asked curious questions, where, this is almost like part of the DNA of the organization, so really, it all comes down to, is all of this what we just talked about encouraged in one way or another,
yeah,
people can thrive, and teams can be high performing. I
yeah.
think so you have to add to that I missed.
I think I think everything you said was beautiful, and the culture is what allows people to, yes, exhibit all these things, practice all these things. And we tend to think of high performers again as like the one or two or handful of people, instead of thinking what I would love to see organizations do more is, how do we create the conditions where many people can be high performers, as opposed to focusing on a handful who may be performing at a high level and maybe doing it in unhealthy, unhelpful, uncollaborative ways that sometimes are damaging to the larger culture, right? So how do we provide the environment where so many people can exhibit these high performing behaviors, be like cultivated, nurtured,
It's,
um, in this way?
yeah, in a way, individualism jumps to mind, how
Yeah.
invited as human beings, and where we can thrive in no matter what parameters or settings,
Mm,
they are. So really, yeah, I think I think this is just really the core of it, you know. Am I allowed to show up and do all these things that we just talked about today?
Yeah. On behalf of my friend and colleague Kristen from Germany and the team at Sarah Olison Inc., thanks everybody for tuning in. We'd love your feedback. We'd love your questions. We'd love if you have any cultural ways of describing the concept of burning the candle at both ends. We'd just love to hear from you, wouldn't we, Kristen? Yeah.
Always, yes, please.
Okay. We'll see you soon, everybody.
Talk to you
Bye.
soon. Bye.